We've all heard the stories. The loner, the outcast, the monster without a friend. But what if the Jeffrey Dahmer you think you know isn't the full story? A candid confession from someone who knew Jeffrey Dahmer personally, cut short by a so-called abnormal personality specialist. But Bridget Geiger dared to tell a different story from the one we've been told. A Jeff who was popular with his classmates, who wasn't a social pariah. A Jeff who didn't seem capable of the unspeakable. Watch her compelling testimony captured in this historic television archive footage.
I was 16. I was not allowed to date, especially car dates. This was my very first date. My mother made me go because it was his only senior prom, and he wanted to take me, and my girlfriend was going. And they more or less talked me into it. They had told me the exact words, a couple hours is not going to kill you. Go ahead and go to the prom with them. He asked me the day before the prom, and he came up and said, Mike said you said you'd go to the prom with me. Is that right? That's exactly how he asked me. He didn't. I knew a week ahead of time, but he was afraid to ask me. He was polite. He did act kind of goofy, but he didn't look like he had a mean bone in his body. He wasn't two-faced like a lot of kids were. He didn't pick on nobody. He didn't cause no trouble as far as starting fights goes, but he took a lot of ribbon from other kids because he wasn't considered good-looking, and he was kind of nerdy, and he really didn't quite fit in. And he did things for attention, and people just really made fun of him and kind of hurt him, I think. He came to the house, and he picked me up, knocked on the door. My dad right away got to check him out, you know, tell him what time we got to be home and this and that. And my dad still wasn't too enthused about this. He didn't want me dating. Came time to pin the corsage on, and my mother had to do it because he was going so slow because he was afraid he's going to stick me with the pin. I mean, ha-ha. I think he was scared to death to touch me or something, maybe. I don't know. We didn't want to take pictures. My mother, dragged us over there to make us take the pictures. Then after we had dinner, we went over to the prom hall. While we were there for a while, he disappeared on me. And I thought he went to the bathroom. Then the time got longer, and I thought, well, geez, he's not in the bathroom, you know. What the heck happened? After he came back, they wouldn't let him back in because he had gone to McDonald's. Because he was so nervous at dinner, he didn't eat enough. He was still hungry. He had the McDonald's bags to prove it. Show me, here's the cheeseburger wrappers. I saved them so in case, you know, he didn't believe where I was. He did apologize. He felt bad. He was real upset, you know. Yeah, he said because he thought he embarrassed me. And I said, no, I was fine. You know, stuff happens.
Here's a photo of Bridget and her prom date, Jeffrey Dahmer. Were you shocked when you first found out that Jeffrey Dahmer had these charges against him?
I wasn't shocked at what happened. I was shocked that I knew somebody did something like that.
How is it that your friends fixed you up with him?
My best friend dated his best friend, and they had said more or less Jeff had a crush on me, and he wanted to go to the prom with me. But at that time, I didn't date. I wasn't allowed to date, but it was a school thing, and I kind of got pushed into it by my mother and my girlfriend.
So you had never dated before?
No.
And your first date? First Jeffrey Dahmer. That's quite a story that you have to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was he nice to you that night? Was he in fact sweet on you?
I really couldn't tell you because we never went out after that, but he was a nice guy. A lot of kids at school liked him.
Yeah, and you were one of them.
Yeah, everybody liked him. He didn't bother anybody.
Mm-hmm. So he showed up that night with a carnation in hand or a corsage in hand?
He had a corsage. My mom had to pin it on me. He was too nervous. My mom was afraid he's going to stick me with the pin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of ironic.
Yeah, it is. And so you ended up going to the prom, and what happened at the prom?
We had dinner before the prom, went to the prom. He disappeared. He didn't get enough to eat at dinner, went to McDonald's. They wouldn't let him back in. So finally, they let him back in, just take me home.
Mm-hmm. So he left you.
Left me at the prom with my girlfriend's, but I was.
And went to McDonald's.
And went to McDonald's. And he said I saved cheeseburger wrappers to prove it.
He did?
Yeah. He had him in the car because he thought he was going to be mad. show where he was.
Were you mad?
Not really. I was talking to my girlfriend.
So you didn't care that... But he did come back to take you home again. And you didn't go to an after-prom party or anything?
No.
You went back home?
I was like barely 16. After prom party, my dad would have killed somebody.
Yeah, yeah. So he took you home, and what happened then?
He shook my hand.
Shook your hand at the door and said goodnight?
Yeah. Said he had a nice time.
And
apologized for leaving me like he did.
Yeah. And then he never called again?
I'd been to his house one time, but I can't remember if it was before or after the prom with a couple friends.
And just a few weeks after the prom, he killed his first victim.
Yeah, that's what I found out today. I didn't know what the time span was because I couldn't...
A few weeks? And you had no clue?
No, he looked like he wouldn't hurt a flea.
And just a few weeks later, he murders?
Yeah.
Do you ever think that, my goodness, it could have been me, or I could have been in danger?
No.
No.
I don't know.
But it must be, I mean, a bit of a shock to you anyway, to find out.
Yeah, that someone you went to school with turned out to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, not just a killer, but one of the most notorious serial killers of all time.
I don't look at it that way. Everybody says how infamous he is. I just look at him like somebody I knew he had a problem.
Why not?
Because people who become serial killers, they're almost entirely men who become serial killers, have an outward sociable personality usually. Some of them are unsociable, but that's the exception. Most of them have a surface amiability that could allow them to charm somebody, go into a store and make a purchase without drawing any attention to themselves, things of that sort, so that an average person just meeting them in a superficial way wouldn't detect anything unusual.
So that charm or likability, as you describe it, would actually help to bring their victims to them?
In many cases, yes. I don't think that is the case with Dahmer. My impression of him is that he is a shy person who, well, as you said, was nerdy, but that, and therefore he would have to use, as it were, stronger means in order to lure his victims. However...
Holland, Michigan recalls that Dahmer once predicted, "You'll hear about me someday." Channel 7's Chuck Gowdy went to Michigan to talk with Goss.
PFC Jeffrey Dahmer, smoking a cigarette and reclining on his bunk at a U.S. Army base in Germany, a few months before his discharge due to drinking problems. The year 1981, the picture taken by this man, who says he was one of Dahmer's Army roommates. David Goss, now a surgical technician here at the Holland, Michigan Community Hospital, says he recalls Dahmer as an average medic, but eager to learn new techniques.
He'd look over my shoulder and watch me, and I'd explain to him what I was doing while I was examining and taking care of the patients. He really cared for the patients. When he was working with me and working under me, he really tried to learn.
Milwaukee police investigators suspect that the Army was where Dahmer learned to use these prescription drugs, which when mixed with alcohol will knock somebody out, a method he's admitted using on many of his 17 victims. Dahmer and Goss were both assigned to a medical unit at the U.S. Army base in Baumholder, West Germany. Goss says Dahmer often talked about his troubled teenage years, but indicated there was one dark secret he could not reveal.
He just referred to it as the problem he couldn't discuss.
That something might have been Dahmer's first murder, committed here at his family's Ohio home a year and a half earlier.
Was the murder that he was talking about in '78, was that the problem that he couldn't discuss with me? Or is that one way that he couldn't open up to me, and I'm just wondering if that was it?
David Goss must be one of hundreds of people who knew Jeff Dahmer during the years of the murder spree. But Goss, like all the rest who knew Dahmer, didn't know him well enough. In Holland, Michigan, Chuck Gowdy.
What was that secret? Was it the weight of Stephen Hicks' accidental death? The answers lie in the conflicting stories of people who knew the real Jeffrey Dahmer, not the monster portrayed in TV shows and tabloid headlines. In his book Across the Hall, neighbor Vernell Bass offers a fresh and surprising perspective on Jeff, painting a picture of a man full of kindness and contradictions. According to Bass, Jeff was gentle with his cat and obsessively neat, keeping his apartment spotless. A far cry from the image portrayed in the media. These unexpected traits add layers to Jeff's character, challenging the one-dimensional narrative we've been fed. So, is it any wonder Vernell wasn't called to testify at the so-called trial? 3 voices, 3 different perspectives, and they all challenge everything we thought we knew about Jeffrey Dahmer's life before the alleged murders began. If you're ready to uncover the hidden truths, subscribe now. There's always more than meets the eye.